to another week of the Gold Country Media Sports Jam. I'm Jordan.
I'm Aaron.
And I'm Matt.
How are we all doing this week? Aaron, I know you were out in the rain at the Sac State game. I mean, how long did you last there?
Yeah, that was absolutely ridiculous. I brought a rain poncho, brought some towels to sit on, but we did not bring an umbrella. We didn't think it'd be that bad. I actually got there early to watch the Argentina Australia World Cup game at the round table at Sac State, and walked around the campus a little bit because I haven't been, obviously been there in a while. But it was ridiculous. We lasted about 2.5 quarters, and then said, "All right, we're freezing." I couldn't feel up my toes, and then watched a little bit from behind the end zone, and then just watched the rest from the parking garage because it was just so cold and rainy. But I mean, there was a lot of Warriors out there, man. A lot of people went and watched that game, and it turned out to be one heck of a football game.
Yeah, I did. I saw that. I was keeping track on my ESPN app, and I was definitely keeping an eye on it. They made us sweat it out a little bit. I was like, oh no, another Sac State team makes the playoffs and gets bounced in the first round. But hey, they pulled it out, and they've got a real shot. Although the team they're playing this Friday that's going to be a tough battle. Incarnate Word is they're pretty solid. But
And I'll be going to that too, so I'm looking forward to that as well.
all right, it's probably going to be rainy again. So
It might very well be.
yeah, Matt, what about you? How was your weekend?
Hey, we got some work involved in the weekend, but telegraph work, but that was all right in terms of the territory. And then, we got the all important Christmas decorations up, so I guess weekend was successful.
I mean, that's like the biggest stress off your shoulders when you get the lights up and the decorations up. You're like, okay, cool. And then you remember, oh yeah, I have to do this again in a month to take them all down. And although coming down's a lot easier than going up, I feel like.
Yeah.
It looks like you got your tree up too, Jordan, behind you, if I'm not mistaken.
This is one of four. This is I'm in Haley's home office. This is one of 4 trees that Haley has in our house right now. She is like the opposite of the Grinch. She just like projectile vomits Christmas everywhere the moment Thanksgiving ends. And we have actually 5 trees in our house currently because we have one in the bedroom now too. And I'm just like, you do understand. I mean, they're not all like massive trees. Some of them are kind of small ones, but yeah, we're gonna have to reel this in a little bit next year. She had a tree going up like November 14th, I think, by this house. And as anyone who's married or engaged can confirm on this show, when your significant other wants to decorate for a holiday, as the guy, your options are pretty much to just say yes. You don't really get much of a say outside of that. But hey, we're all Christmased out here. We're all ready. We've got most of our shopping done already. That's all good. I actually finished the last of my shopping. And the best Christmas present came. I got 2 Kings wins and the 3rd straight Raiders win this weekend. So hey, a pretty good weekend. Had a little victory steak and chicken last night. So I'd say it was a good weekend overall, but kind of, pivoting back to the high school sports, the last football game in our Gold Country media area happened this weekend. It was a bit of a heartbreaker for the hosts. Matt, you were there. Talk about what you saw from Folsom De La Salle Extravaganza 2.0.
Yeah. 17-14 Spartans victory. Obviously it was a heartbreaking defeat, especially when you consider, they lost by 3 and Folsom missed a 27-yard field goal that Jake Tremaine probably could make with his eyes closed 9 times out of 10, but on this particular instance, he pushed it right. But that was in the second quarter, and that wasn't the reason Folsom lost the game. But it would have given the Bulldogs a 10-7 lead at the time, about 7 minutes left in the second quarter. But regardless, the difference in the game was De La Salle's defense. They were just outstanding. I mean, Folsom could do little offensively. In the first half, Austin Mack, Folsom's quarterback, has had an outstanding season. Great numbers almost every week. He was 2 out of 6 for 20 yards and an interception in the first half. So there's been first halves this year where he's like 15 out of 20. I mean, De La Salle's defense was just excellent, and in the end, that's why Folsom lost the game. First drive of the game. Let me take you through this. First drive of the game for Folsom. De La Salle got the ball first. Folsom stopped him. Folsom was moving the ball down the field fairly good. I mean, they're only at like De La Salle 40-yard line. And they bring in Ryder Lyons, a freshman quarterback, as a running quarterback this week. On certain plays, they had game plan for him to run the ball. Hey, the hole opens right in the middle of the line. He burst through for about a 15-yard gain, and he got hacked and fumbled the ball. So that turnover hurt him there because they were, they had some momentum there. And then, but 3 plays later, or, when De La Salle got the ball back, Greco Carrillo picked up a fumble and returned it for a touchdown. So, 7-0 Folsom. But, we'll take that. Good start. De La Salle returned the favor the next possession. They scored, so tied it up at 7 early in the second quarter. Next drive, Joseph Chavez interception for the Bulldogs. So here we are, have a chance to take a lead again, and that's when Tremaine missed the field goal. So still tied at 7. De La Salle goes down the field, kicks the field goal, takes a 10-7 lead. First play of the next drive, Austin Mack throws an interception. De La Salle returns to the 3-yard line, scores a touchdown a couple plays later. So all of a sudden, just like that, De La Salle goes from a 7-7 tie to a 17-7 lead. So that was a big swing right there in the game. Let's see here. Where am I at? So anyway, Folsom's defense pitched a shutout in the second half, obviously, but again, offensively, they could do little. They scored 1 touchdown. I don't know if it was a point where Paul Daugherty, the Folsom head coach, just decided to be more aggressive than he was being with his play calling earlier, because after the game, he said, perhaps, maybe we should have been more aggressive. He goes, we were aggressive at one point, threw a fly pattern to Brian Ray, and it was a 41-yard gain. A great over-the-shoulder catch by Ray. Next play, a 30-yard pass to Greco Carrillo, and they're down at the 1-yard line. Ryder Lyons scores on the next play, and it's 17-14. And, after it just, at 17-7, it just seemed like game over because this Folsom could not do a thing. And here we are, they scored a touchdown. It's only a 3-point game, 8 minutes to go. I'm like, hey, they got a chance. But they never got the ball back. De La Salle ran out the last 7 minutes and 52 seconds on the clock, converting a pair of 4th and 2 runs to seal the victory. And I will say this, De La Salle won the game, but I didn't see any replays of it, but I swear at least on one of those 4th and 2s, I didn't think they got the mark, but they got some good spots from the officials and they give it a first down, but I didn't, especially that second one. Folsom would have only had about 30 seconds to score. Hey, stranger things have happened, but anyway, De La Salle won the game and they deserve to. So, congrats to them.
Matt, it's kind of crazy. I know you and I were talking a little bit before the show, but everyone's saying it. They're like, oh, it's a down year for De La Salle. It's a down year for De La Salle, and you kind of look at it, you're like, wait a minute, they're playing for the Division I state championship on this weekend. Like, what do you mean? It's a down year for De La Salle.
When you win 245 games in a row, you're expected to win all the time, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. I guess any year you don't go undefeated against NorCal teams and don't play like John Bosco and Mater Dei close, I guess you can call it a down year. But it's funny that, hey, a down year at De La Salle is like, the dream season for most high school programs. And there it's just, a day's work. It's impressive what, all those big programs have done. The Folsoms, the De La Salles, every big program that you can think of, it's impressive thinking these guys are expecting to be playing pretty much to Christmas break every year.
Yeah, it's very, you get the NorCal final and lose and you're upset with your season. That's greedy.
Yeah, it's like you have good. That's like when I heard Patriot fans complain for a long time. I'm like, oh, boo-hoo, it must be so rough winning 6 Super Bowls in 18 years.
Yeah.
And obviously Sarah's, I think, has had a pretty good season over in the Bay too. If I'm not mistaken, isn't Sarah playing St. John Bosco in the state championship?
In the open division, yep. So that'll be an interesting one. I'm curious to see what happens there. But we did have, while football season is ending, we have had some other stuff going on. I know the high school hoops season has really been getting going. We had some impressive performances. I know up in my area, Colfax girls have really made some noise. They opened the season. It was a foundation game, so I guess the win doesn't technically count on their record, but beating Del Oro by 20. I know Del Oro isn't the girls basketball program we're used to seeing this year, but anytime a Division 5 school goes and beats an SFL program by 20, that's going to open some eyes. And then Colfax, all they did was followed it up in the Coach G Memorial opener with a 59-41 win over Rockland. So another big one for them. They ended up beating Del Campo pretty handily in the semifinals. They lost to Pleasant Valley of Chico in the championship game 58-48. But Pleasant Valley is a pretty strong program. I expect big things out of this Colfax team, and they're actually playing Calaveras tonight, which is probably the two best teams that are going to be in the Division IV field in girls high school basketball for this section. And I will be up there in Colfax tonight watching that one. Couple other notables in the area from girls basketball. Placer girls took third in their tournament. They beat Union Mine, lost to Pleasant Valley in the semifinals, and then beat Del Campo. And then the Placer boys team won the Harlan Carter tournament in Reading for the second straight season. They beat University Prep, Enterprise, and Foothill all by double digits. So shout out to Placer for making that road trip and coming down with a win. And then the Wildfire Classic, I had a few fun ones there. Forest Hill, after losing to Rio Vista by 2 after just missing a half-court heave at the buzzer, they beat John Adams and Golden Sierra to take 5th at the tourney, so salvaging 2 wins out of that. Bear River took 2nd at the tournament. They lost to Rio Vista in the championship 42-41. I'll have a little more on some of the big performances from that in a little bit. Then Colfax took 3rd with wins over John Adams Academy and Victory Christian after, they had a great win against John Adams in the beginning. They were actually losing at halftime. John Adams played a great game, and Colfax opened the third quarter on a 15-1 run and really just took control of that game. And John Adams, Colfax would pull out to like a 12-point lead. John Adams would close it to like 5 or 6, but they just never could get back. And, credit to get Devin Ginty into the Falcons for making the adjustments there. That kind of does it for some of the basketball in my area. Aaron, I know you had a weekend full of hoops. So kind of talk to me about what's been happening down in your area on the hardwood.
Yeah, I've had a week full of everything. Literally, I think every day I've been at something this last week. So let me go ahead and start with Tuesday. So Tuesday I was at Lincoln for Wood Creek versus Lincoln for the boys. At the time, Lincoln was 5-0, undefeated. Wood Creek, of course, that was going to be their toughest opponent up to that point, and they proved to be. Austin Ito, senior guard, he's going to probably lead them all season long. He has multiple games where he's scoring over 30. Lincoln did a solid job defensively. They limited him to 16 points. 12 of his points were in the second half, and he did get in foul trouble a little early in that game. But still, you limit the opposing star to 16 points, you think that you have a good chance to win that game. But Wood Creek's defense was even more solid. Max Van Lanningham, the senior or the freshman 6'6" center, he had 11 points and 9 rebounds and 3 blocks. He looks like he's going to be a menace to opposing defenses. And he's going to be a menace to opposing offenses too, because he played such a really solid defensive game. On the Zebra side, Benny Jomo led the way with 14 points, but the Zebras just did not shoot the ball well. They only made 11 shots. I think they were about 30% from the field. They definitely could have shot the ball a little bit better from the free throw line as well. Committed too many turnovers. That's going to happen when you play a more physical team that you haven't seen yet. And as I'll get into in a little bit, they have been playing better ever since. But yeah, so Wood Creek picked up a win. That was Lincoln's first loss. And then Wednesday, I was back at Lincoln, but this time it was for girls basketball. Lincoln took on Del Oro. As you mentioned, Del Oro not having Gabby Kime, not having Madison Butcher, who Madison, by the way, over at Sac State's playing pretty solid to start off the season. They're off the bench. Not having those players, obviously does play an impact, but they still have a solid team. They beat Lincoln 57-44 on Wednesday night, and they were led by junior Shaylin Perry. She had 17 in the game. Sophia Haro had 16. They forced a ton of Lincoln turnovers. They forced 23 Lincoln turnovers. Katie Leith for Lincoln still played a solid game, had 22 points, 13 rebounds, 5 blocks. Lincoln was without Maya Hodge, their point guard, who I know is probably, when she's healthy, going to be their second best player on the team. They have seen other players that have stepped up and kind of played that role as the second scorer in the meantime. But yeah, so Lincoln started off the year, started off their home record with a loss, and then Del Oro picked up a big win there. That was their first win of the year. So that was Tuesday and Wednesday, and I was at some soccer, but before I get into that, I'll mention that the NorCal Tip-Off Tournament took place this last weekend, which was at Rockland Whitney, with the finals in the third place game on Saturday taking place at William Jessup. After I was at the Sac State game, I made my way over to William Jessup to cover the finals, which was between Rockland and Clovis West. And, Rockland's got a really solid team, and they're young. Four of their five starters are non-seniors. Their only senior starter is Dean Perry, who I believe earned all tournament honors in the same tournament last year. But it's Mark Lavernov, the sophomore, who was a starter last year as well, who really played a big role for the Thunder this entire tournament. He averaged 16 points per game. He had 19 points and 12 rebounds and 4 blocks in the finals against Clovis West, but they just couldn't pull it out. Clovis West is going to be one of the toughest basketball programs in Central and Northern California this year, and they proved it. They had multiple players step up. Isaac Martinez and Zach Shohan both had 14 in the game. I think Martinez was the tournament MVP. Rockland had a 19-17 lead at the end of the first quarter, and then they trailed by 2 at halftime at the end of the third. And they were only down 3 with 5 minutes to go, and then Clovis West just went on a run. They just play really tough with the pressure that they bring. So Rockland lost that one, but they still finished second, and they look really good going forward. Del Oro was also at that tournament. They lost to Sac High in the third place game, so they finished fourth, and then Whitney finished sixth in the tournament. There's a lot more with hoops I'll get into, and I think some of it kind of gets into my athletes of the week. But I'll go ahead and turn it over back to you, Jordan, and then we'll get into soccer and then impressive performances in a little bit.
All right, sounds good. And one little interesting note about Shaylin Perry on Del Oro. Her dad is actually the offensive coordinator, Josh Perry, who played for the Philadelphia Eagles. So very athletic family over there. Obviously, her brother was a great receiver at DO, and I believe they have a younger brother coming up that's a pretty stud athlete too. So shout out to them, a great great athletic family over there. And Matt, throwing it over to you. I know you just got done with football, so you haven't really gotten to track down everything with basketball yet. But what do you know from your basketball team so far before we get into soccer?
Well, I mean, I can just give you some results. I don't really have much detail, but Folsom boys basketball was up the Wild West shootout in Reno, and they won that tournament in the finals, beating Spanish Springs 47-37. I was told Coach Mike Wall has COVID, so he wasn't there, but I know he could watch from home, and I know he loves defense, and holding the Spanish Springs to 37 points on the final made him happy. Anyway, great defensive effort by the Bulldogs. It's a great start for them, and they expect to have a great season. The girls team was down at Clovis West, as was Oak Ridge's girls, for the Clovis West tournament. Folsom went 2-1, won 2 games easily, and then the finale against the showcase game against Clovis West, who apparently like the boys team. The girls team is always good. And Clovis West beat Folsom pretty easily, 67-46. But still a good start for Folsom. Oak Ridge girls went 2-2 down that tournament. They were very young this year, only 2 juniors and 2 seniors, and like 9 sophomores. So Steve White's got a very young team. 2-2. I mean, he'll take that at this point, as long as they're improving. All tournament honors went to Lauren Marsh and Ava Edwards. Oak Ridge boys was were at the Jack Scott tournament in Rio Americano. They went 1-2, losing the final game of the tournament to SFL rival Granite Bay in overtime, 65-62. I actually went to that game just to check it out. Didn't really write anything on it yet, or I don't know if I will, but Oak Ridge, 6'7", Caleb Edwards, their tight end for the football team. I mean, he looked bigger on the basketball court to me. They didn't win football pads, so he's going to be a force. He played a great game. He's going to lead them in scoring in the paint, and he's going to dominate in the paint this year. But in the end, Granite Bay got the win. They played better down the stretch and won the game. Vista boys were up at the Gold Dust tournament in El Dorado. They won 2 out of 3, and they took third place. They beat Marysville in the third place game, 64-62. And the Vista girls were in the Davis tournament, and they also took third, beating Whitney in overtime, 49-43, which ironically they play again tonight at Whitney. So that might be a good game to catch. So yeah, in that game for Vista, or in that tournament for Vista, Emma Lyons and Ella Scarnez were all tournament players.
All right, I like it. You got some impressive basketball over there too. You might be looking at that season lasting just as long as the football one with some of the teams you have over there.
Folsom's going to be strong, both boys and girls. So yeah.
And kind of moving over, we had some basketball or some soccer. I'm sorry, going on. I know in my area we had Colfax, one of the more impressive teams. They've gotten off to a huge start. They're 3-0-1. They beat El Dorado 8-1 on Thursday night. Then they had a tournament over the weekend where they tied Placer 1-1, beat Bear River 7-1, and beat Nevada Union 6-0. So when your goal differential, when you're outscoring opponents 22-3 in your first 4 games of the year, I think you're poised to have a pretty strong season. Placer's girls are doing pretty well too. They're 2-1-1 so far on the year. They lost to 12 Bridges on Wednesday night in the opener. And then they tied Colfax. They beat Shasta 1-0, beat Golden Sierra 5-0. They're going to be playing Whitney on Wednesday night. I will be checking that one out, weather pending, I suppose. But it's turf field, so I think we should be okay on that. The Bear River girls team, 0-5 to start the year, a little bit of a rough start, but they did have a close one against Golden Sierra. That's something they can build some momentum on. They open league play up on Tuesday at Lyndhurst, so that'll be an interesting matchup for sure. And then the Placer boys off to a 3-0 start. They beat 12 Bridges 3-0 on Wednesday, beat Bradshaw Christian 4-2 on Friday, and Calaveras on Friday as well, 3-1. But I think the coolest moment of the weekend from soccer actually came from 2 schools that are in Aaron's coverage range, but it was the coolest moment of my sports journalism career so far. I was covering Rockland and Antelope at Heart Health Park in Sacramento. And I know I've been very vocal that, hey, I went to DO and have some pride in that, but my youngest brother Luke is a sophomore on the varsity soccer team at Rockland, and I got to cover his first varsity game of the season, but he also scored the game-winning goal in a 2-1 win over Antelope. So I have to give a shout out to my youngest brother Luke Georgeson. That was awesome to see. His first varsity goal was the game winner, and it was so cool that I got to be there covering it. I was worried, I didn't want to be too much of a homer, but I'm like, hey, you scored the game-winning goal. I mean, I have to interview you for the story. And, that was just a cool moment getting to see my brother score a game-winning goal in his first, varsity game for his first varsity goal. So shout
And
out.
anybody who is a reader, stay tuned for a piece that me and Jordan are writing for boys soccer in the area this week, because he took some amazing shots at that game, and I definitely want to see a couple of those go in the paper for sure.
Yeah, I think that was probably my coolest thing too, is some of those shots from that game. I mean, I'm shocked they let that game go on with the conditions that field was in, but it was amazing, some of the shots from that pitch. So, Aaron, throwing it over to you, though. I know you had some big soccer. I know I touched a little bit on some of your schools because we had some crossover, but what did you see from some of your soccer programs?
Yeah, so getting back to where I was at last week. So Thursday, I decided to go over to 12 Bridges to check out the boys game for 12 Bridges versus West Park. And the Panthers, they actually picked up, it was their first game of the season, and they actually picked up their first win in varsity program history, because they were 0-12-1 last year, and they actually won this one. So they won 2-0. They just controlled possession a ton in the first half. 12 Bridges got a little bit of possession in the second half, was able to move it upfield and got a couple shots on goal. But no, I mean, West Park did their job and they won 2-0. So congrats to them for getting their first win out of the way. Friday, I was at 2 soccer games. I went to Rockland and Whitney. They had a girls soccer tournament over the weekend, and I went to see Rockland play with the West Park girls. Rockland dominated 6-1 with 6 different goal scorers. Gia Costanzo, Sarah Murphy, Isla Sieber, if I'm pronouncing that right. Leah Savage, she actually was on the tennis team as well. Neilani Damacion, if I'm pronouncing that one right, and then Mackenzie Smotherman. It's also important to keep to make note, though, that for both teams and really for all teams in this tournament, there were a plethora of girls across teams that weren't there because they were actually at ECNL, which is Elite Clubs National League in Tennessee. So, you didn't necessarily have what you would see as the best talent out there on the field in terms of what you're going to expect to see when it comes to league play. But I still think it was really cool and interesting to check out, because you're going to get to see, hey, what are some of the role players capable of? What are some of the players that are going to be, the first strings coming off the bench capable of? And I think that was something that was kind of really cool to see. So Rockland actually went on and lost to Windsor in the finals of that tournament, so they finished second, so congrats to them. After that game, I went over to Roseville to check out Del Oro Roseville boys, and despite the Tigers taking a 1-0 halftime lead off of a goal by Joel Bradley, the Golden Eagles fought back and equalized with a Logan Webster strike before sophomore Nathan Gutenberger just absolutely, a ball deflected right to him, and he just struck it perfectly into the top corner in the 67th minute. So Del Oro picked up a 2-1 win there, so congrats to them. And then also make note, I'm checking out Lincoln's boys team tonight. They are playing, I believe, El Dorado, if I'm not mistaken. And then Lincoln's girls team, they won their first 2 games of the season. One over Wheatland and one in the tournament opener, that same tournament at Rockland Whitney, over Antelope. And then they lost 3 in a row despite some hard fought losses there. So yeah.
All right, so we had some big stuff up there. Matt, what about you? What have you seen from teams on the pitch so far?
Full disclosure, I have not tapped into my soccer yet, so that'll be this week.
Hey, you know what? No worries. You've probably been the busiest out of all of us in the last week with at least Aaron and I are done with our fall sports. You were still full swing in that, so no harm, no foul there. But I know we got some big matchup, or I guess actually before we get into that, let's get into some of the athletes of the week. Aaron, let's kind of start with you because I know you had probably the most to cover. You got the widest net. What were some of the best performances you saw this week?
Yes. So I want to start. My South Placer Athlete of the Week is going to be Mark Lavrinov, the sophomore over at Rockland for basketball. As I mentioned, he averaged 16 points per game in the tournament. He played a big role, like I said, despite them having a plethora of other players who played well, such as Josiah Andrews, who's a freshman. He just had such an impact defensively. He's got long arms, tall, really plays good defense, and I think he's just going to be a force for the Thunder this season. So he's my South Placer Athlete of the Week. My Lincoln Athlete of the Week, getting back to Lincoln girls soccer, is Avery Aronson. She scored 4 goals in the first 2 games. She had a hat trick against Wheatland and then had the game-winning header against Antelope to win 1-0 in the first tournament game. She actually also, I should make note and change this to 5, she actually scored a goal in the Maria Carrillo game that they lost 2-1 over the weekend as well. So congrats to her. She's been playing really well to start the season. And then I wanted to mention, honestly, before I get into a couple other individuals, I just wanted to shout out a team. I mentioned Lincoln basketball earlier, how I feel like they've gotten better even after, since that loss to Wood Creek. They beat 12 Bridges in what was, I understand, to be a very highly contested and highly attended game over in Wheatland in the Wheatland tournament final. And Lincoln won 50-44. Jordan, I know you're doing something on that. And I watched the first half of it. There definitely looked to be quite a few turnovers, but there also was a lot of really good, solid defense, and so that's an interesting game. Lincoln is now 2-0, I guess, in varsity competition against 12 Bridges. So it'll be interesting to see how that crosstown rivalry continues going forward. I wanted to also mention back to basketball, Granite Bay's girls basketball senior Riley Robertson. She scored 37 points with 8 rebounds and 8 assists in a win over Nevada Union last Tuesday. And then actually cross country, even though the season's over for high school for cross country, Whitney's Katie Kopeck was top 10 at the Champ Sports Cross Country West Regional and will race in the national finals next weekend. And I plan on doing a recap on that. One other thing I wanted to mention, yesterday I was actually down at Capital Christian announcing the Optimist girls volleyball all-star games. And in the small school game for the North team, Jordan Dieter from Lincoln was the MVP. And then in the large school game, Caitlin Cochran from Whitney was the MVP. So they both played really well. Dieter had 10 kills. I think Cochran had like 12. So, and there were players all across the area that were in those games.
All right, I like it. Some impressive, and hey, you had probably some of the most impressive volleyball in the area, so it makes sense you had the MVPs of the games. I know for some of my athletes of the week, I really have. I guess I'll say I have a boys and a girls in this situation. My boys is going to be Tyler Brennis, who had 30 points for Bear River in their opening win against Golden Sierra in the Wildfire Classic. But what impressed me the most about him is I was talking to him after the game and I asked him about the performance, and Bear River won by 32. I think the final score was something, it was something crazy. Let me see if I have it in front of me real quick. It was 68-36. So you'd think, hey, not much to be upset about. He had probably about 10 steals himself, 30 points, like an impressive game. And I asked him about it and he goes, we can be better. We committed 18 turnovers in this. And I'm like, if that's where your mind goes after a great game like that, then you have a good mindset. And this is going to be a good team moving forward, because most teams look at a 32-point win and they're happy. But if you can find things to tune up after that and you are kicking yourself for wishing you guys could have been better after an already great performance, then you have some strong leadership in that locker room. And then for girls, my biggest performance is actually going to be Kaya Diedrichs of Colfax High School. And I don't give a sport because she plays two. She was Colfax's leading scorer the other day in their win over, I believe it was Rockland. She had 19 points on Thursday night. She's been one of the leading scorers of the basketball team all year long. But then she also has seven of Colfax's goals, I'm sorry, in soccer this season, and 2 assists. Last year, as a freshman, she broke the school's scoring record with, I think, 39 goals, I believe it was. 4 games in, she's already got 7 goals right now, 2 assists. So she's flying pretty high right now and looking pretty impressive as the Falcons get ready to start their season. And the best part about this girls soccer team over at Colfax is one of their best players, the reigning PBL MVP, Shellen Ackerman, is not even playing right now because she's also playing ECNL. And I don't think they're going to get her back till the second week of league. But I mean, from the looks of it so far, they don't really need it. So shout out to both of you for being the athletes of the week of the Auburn area. Matt, thrown over to you. What were some of the most impressive performances you saw this week?
Well, last week my athlete of the week was Folsom safety Slade Wilson had helped Folsom win that game to get to the NorCal finals. But actually, I'm going. This performance was from last week as well. It's Oak Ridge senior cross country runner Quinn Walker, who led Oak Ridge helped lead Oak Ridge to a second place finish in the state cross country Division I finals. Quinn got any cross country coach will tell you the summer training is vitally important to success during the season, because you just can't start running, August 10th and think you're going to have a great year. I mean, you got to build up some mileage over the summer. Quinn missed all of her summer training because she was sick. She got sick right after the state track and field meet. She was sick for 3 or 4 weeks. Late July, early September, or early August, I forget. She sprained an ankle somewhere there. Missed another month, so she really didn't start running again until September. In the first league cross country meet, she was Oak Ridge's 5th runner, and she said her time was probably 2 minutes slower than what it should have been had she been, a full summer training and and all that. So anyway, week by week, she just her ankle got better. She trained. She didn't give up. She was frustrated. She was, it was a tough time. She had to fight through all this because, when you're not 100%, you're not running as fast as you could or should be. She had thoughts of like, she's hurting the team because I'm not running fast enough. She's disappointed in herself because, she's not running like she did the previous year. Anyway, she gets through all that. She fights through it all season long. And here in the end, her last 2 meets, section meet and the state championship meet, she came through for her team, had great runs. And in that state meet, she was their number 1 finisher. And this is from the first league meet, she was the 5th runner to the state meet. She got back up to the top runner. So it was just a real impressive performance. And Coach Rob Fairley talked about her all year long, how she's making progress. And then for her to come through like that in the final meet, it warranted some more recognition. So I give her athlete of the week.
All right, I like it. And we've got a big week coming up. I know more basketball tournaments, more soccer tournaments, more of a little bit of everything. So we should be busy. But before we get going, does anyone have anything we want to add?
Actually, I had a couple things I wanted to add. Yes,
All
thank
right.
you for asking. So I meant to mention this earlier and I totally forgot. Valley Christian Academy, small school over in Roseville. Their boys and girls basketball teams both played in tournaments over the weekend. Their girls team won. They're actually 5-0 right now. They beat Highlands 54-23. Their boys team finished 3rd. They're 3-1, and they were 3rd in the Redwood Classic up in Boonville. And so congratulations to both of them. The girls, they've won so many section titles. I want to say they've won 6 section titles in like the last 9 or 10 years, that they actually are now going to have to play in D5. They've gone from D6 and now they're going to have to play in D5. So they're going to have tougher competition when it comes to playoff time, but I expect them to still be a dominant team in the SMAL. And speaking of my predictions, I know we probably want to save some of this for next week so we actually see some of our schools, but I want to get SFL out of the way real quick, and I might bite my tongue by the end of the season on this, but I've done some thinking. And so for the boys, I don't know as much, obviously, about Folsom and Oak Ridge. I don't cover it, but I know Folsom won the tournament, as you mentioned, Matt, and I expect them to still be really solid. So I'm going to give them first place, and I think the Oak Ridge will be competitive as well. I think in terms of my area, I would probably say, just from what I've seen, Rockland will probably be the best out of all the teams I cover. I'm going to give the edge to Granite Bay for second, especially since they won the tournament you mentioned earlier, Matt, and they've got a lot of returning players. I'm going to mispronounce his name, and I will get it right at some point this year, but I believe Yakub Mir, I think that's how you pronounce it. He's a senior over there at Granite Bay, and he's been a dominant player the last couple of years for that team. I expect him to have a wonderful senior season. I'm going to say Whitney third and Del Oro right behind them. And the only reason I say that, even though Del Oro had a better finish in the tournament, is Whitney had I think a harder path to get to where they did, and the losses they had were only, I think, by 2 points to Sac High and by 1 point to Berkeley, whereas Del Oro lost, I want to say, by like 10 or 12 points to Sac High. So I think there's definitely going to be some great hoops for SFL for the boys. I'll save the rest of my predictions in terms of girls and everything else for next week so I can see some more games. But yes.
I'll say two things with that. One, it's interesting you point out the margin of victory, because I actually kind of made a little bit of a note of that with Forest Hill. Forest Hill took fifth in their tournament. They went 2-1. They lost to Rio Vista 44-42. Rio Vista beat Bear River in the championship 42-41. Forest Hill was 1 point off of that, and they handily won their other two games. Rio Vista handled Colfax pretty well. I think it was a 13-point game in the semifinal of that tournament. So, and Forest Hill was about a half court heave going a couple inches to the right from winning that game. So, I mean, you know, you do take some stock in where teams finishing these tournaments, but I think looking at the matchups and the margin of victory is a little more important than looking at, you know, what is going on. Because a lot of teams too, when they're hosting a tournament, they'll give themselves an easier bracket to the final because you want your school to be in the final of the tournament that you're hosting. You know, we see it almost every single weekend. So I do think people need to start taking some stock, not necessarily, I mean, where you place in the tournament is important, but more so of who you played and what the margin of victory or defeat was. I think that's where we need to really look in the tournament. Then the other thing I wanted to run by, and I'll open this up to the panel for discussion before we go. You said the SMAL. Now, I have always had this debate. Do we call it the small or the smal?
I just call it the small because there's 4 small schools in the area. I was just gonna say real quick before you open it back up again. I wish, honestly, especially how well they played this weekend. I wish John Adams was in the SMAL because I'd love to see some matchups with them in Valley Christian. I know Western Sierra is down a little bit this year because I think they graduated 2 of their best players, but I mean I think there's just some great matchups across there. Forest Hill, obviously, John Adams, Forest Hill, VC. I think there's gonna be some good matchups in the league this year.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm with you on the small thing. Matt, we're going to throw it to you before we go. Is it small or smal?
I mean, small sounds better. I guess I gotta go small.
It does sound better. All right. Well, that's going to just about do. Oh, Matt, you had something?
I did.
All
I
right,
did.
perfect.
Well, I just wanted to throw out the, you know, it's a big Folsom Vista Winter Classic this week. Girls basketball. It's a big fundraiser for both programs. The varsity gold division and the JV gold division will be held at Folsom High. The JV and varsity silver division will be held at Vista. So if you're looking, if anyone down in the Folsom area is looking for watch some girls basketball, you know, support those tournaments. Folsom Vista opens up against Oak Ridge at 6 p.m. Thursday at Folsom High. This is varsity, and Folsom plays Pleasant Grove at 9 o'clock Thursday. So if you want to check out basketball, and one cute thing from the football game, Coach Darty, I happened to witness this, and I asked him if I could use it, and he graciously said yes. It's just a cute little story. You know, after the game, you know, the teams line up, and you know, the runner-up gets the plaque, and then the winner gets the, you know, the championship plaque. And then, you know, teams split up. You know, De La Salle goes to celebrate, Folsom goes to talk to their guys, and after the talk, they all hug and shake hands, and you know, things have died down. Coach Darty's, you know, standing there with his son, his 4-year-old son. I believe his name is Luke. And Luke goes, "Daddy, this plaque's not as big as last year." And Coach Darty goes, "Well, that's because we won last year." So I just thought that was a cute little story I wanted to share. So
I love that. The child's innocence.
yes.
All right, I like it, and that's a great story to leave us with. But that is going to just about do it for this week's episode of the Sports Jam. Come back next week. We're going to have lots more tournament coverage, especially now that we are full swing into winter sports season. I've been Jordan.
I've been Aaron.
And I'm Matt.
We will see you next week.